The morning sun broke through the restless clouds, painting the small town in flashes of gold and gray. A storm had been circling all night, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. Tu Diep held Nhi's tiny hand tightly as they walked toward the school gates. The little girl's laughter rose above the sound of dripping rooftops, filling Diep's heart with warmth she never thought she would know. The morning sun broke through the restless clouds, painting the small town in flashes of gold and gray. A storm had been circling all night, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet earth. Tu Diep held Nhi's tiny hand tightly as they walked toward the school gates. The little girl's laughter rose above the sound of dripping rooftops, filling Diep's heart with warmth she never thought she would know. For months, she had cared for Nhi as if the child had been born from her own body. Every day began with breakfast together. Every evening ended with stories whispered before sleep. To Tu Diep, Nhi was not just a child. She found she was her daughter, her joy, her reason to breathe. But that morning felt different. A pair of unfamiliar eyes followed them from across the street, sharp, searching, carrying a weight that unsettled Diep. Soon after, an older woman stepped forward, her voice trembling yet strong. "Are you Tu Diep?" She introduced herself as Nhi's grandmother, the blood relative who had come from far away to take the little girl back. Diep's heart froze. She remembered the endless weeks when no one came for Nhi, when the police tried but failed to find her family. She had filled that empty space with love, giving Nhi a home. And now, suddenly, the family appeared not with gentle reunion, but with demand. The two women sat together in a quiet tea shop. Rain tapped on the window as the grandmother spoke of blood ties and the duty of family. Her words were sharp, almost accusing, reminding Diep that no matter how much love she poured into the child, she could never replace the bond of blood. Diep tried to keep her composure, her voice soft yet shaking as she explained how much Nhi meant to her, how deeply she feared letting go. Nhi's grandmother did not relent. She wanted to take the girl immediately, claiming it was time for the family to reclaim what was theirs. The weight of the moment pressed down on Diep until her eyes blurred with tears. How could she explain that love was more than blood, that her days would be empty without Nhi's voice calling her mother? In desperation, Diep begged for just one day to hold the child she had raised, to give her one last memory of happiness before the storm of separation tore them apart. For a moment, silence hung between them, only broken by the clinking of cups. At last, the grandmother sighed and agreed. 1 or 2 days more, she said, but then I will return for her. Diep's relief was fragile, mixed with sorrow. She knew the clock had started ticking, and every smile, every word from Nhi in the next hours would be a goodbye in disguise. That night, when she tucked the child into bed, Nhi looked up with innocent eyes and whispered, "Mother, don't cry, I am here with you." Diep broke down in silence, pressing her lips to Nhi's hair, knowing that soon the world would try to take this child away, somewhere far from home. James was working, unaware of the storm gathering around the two people he cared for most. Far away in Haiduong, James sat across a long table, papers scattered before him, the low hum of business negotiations filling the room. Yet, no matter how firmly he tried to focus on contracts and figures, his thoughts drifted back to Tu Diep. He remembered the way her voice trembled on the phone earlier, how she hesitated as if hiding something she could not bear to say. It was unlike her. Tu Diep was always open, always gentle, yet that morning her words were guarded, unfinished. When the meeting ended, James stepped outside into the cool dusk. The air carried the sound of motorcycles and vendors calling from the streets, but all he could hear was the echo of Diep's silence. He lit a cigarette, though he rarely smoked, and stared at the glow at its tip. Something was wrong, he was certain of it. Back in her small house, Tu Diep sat by the window, watching Nhi sleep peacefully after their day together. The child clutched a small stuffed bear against her chest. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Diep's heart ached. Tomorrow or the next day, Nhi's grandmother would return, and Diep would have to let go. Yet what tore her apart was not only the thought of losing Nhi, it was the nagging suspicion that the grandmother had not come on her own. The way she spoke, the confidence in her tone, hinted at something more calculated, as if someone had pushed her to appear at precisely this moment, and Tu Diep could not ignore one possibility: James' father. He had always disapproved of her, the simple village woman with no wealth, no name, who had entered his son's life. To him, she was a distraction, a weakness. Could it be that he had tracked down Nhi's family, or even paid them, to tear the child away, knowing that such a wound would break Diep's spirit and perhaps loosen her bond with James? Diep wiped her tears quickly as her phone buzzed. It was James calling again. She hesitated, then answered. Diep, his voice was firm, laced with concern. "Tell me the truth. What happened today? You sound different. Don't hide from me." For a moment, she wanted to stay silent, to shield him from worry while he worked. But the weight was too heavy, and her heart spilled over. "James, Nhi's grandmother came. She wants to take her away." There was a pause on the line, sharp as a blade. Then James' voice dropped lower. "Who sent her?" I don't know," Diep whispered, though deep down she did. "But she is determined. She says blood is stronger than love. She says Nhi must go." James clenched his jaw, his knuckles whitening around the phone. He knew his father's methods: quiet manipulations, hidden hands pulling strings. The thought that his own blood could orchestrate such cruelty toward Tu Diep made rage surge through him. "Diep," he said, his voice steadier now, carrying the weight of a promise, "listen to me. You will not face this alone. If my father is behind this, then he has declared war not only on you, but on me. I will be home soon. Until then, keep Nhi close, whatever happens. Do not let her out of your sight." Tu Diep closed her eyes, tears slipping free as she held the phone against her ear. For the first time that day, she felt a glimmer of strength, because James was not only a man she loved, but a shield willing to stand between her and the storm his own family had unleashed. And so the stage was set: a grandmother bound by blood, a father bound by ambition, and James, torn between love and loyalty, preparing for a battle that would decide the fate of the woman and child who had become his world. The night dragged on, heavy and restless. Tu Diep lay awake beside the small bed where Nhi slept, her tiny breaths rising and falling in rhythm, unaware of the storm gathering outside her fragile world. Every creak of the wooden house, every gust of wind against the shutters, made Diep's chest tighten. She knew tomorrow would come too quickly, and with it, the grandmother's shadow. The night dragged on, heavy and restless. Tu Diep lay awake beside the small bed where Nhi slept, her tiny breaths rising and falling in rhythm, unaware of the storm gathering outside her fragile world. Every creak of the wooden house, every gust of wind against the shutters, made Diep's chest tighten. She knew tomorrow would come too quickly, and with it, the grandmother's shadow. Far on the highway, headlights cut through the darkness. James had abandoned the hotel in Hai Duong, choosing to drive through the night. The deal could wait. His heart could not. The thought of Diep fighting this battle alone clawed at him until the decision was no longer his to make. He had to be there. Each mile brought him closer to the truth he dreaded, that his father's hand was in all of this. By dawn, when the storm clouds broke apart into strips of pale light, James stepped through the gate of Diep's house. She was already outside, her face pale from sleeplessness. Yet when she saw him, relief softened her eyes. She rushed forward, her voice trembling. "James, you came." "I had to," he answered simply, pulling her close, feeling how fragile she was in his arms. "Where is Nhi?" "Still asleep," Diep whispered, glancing back toward the house. "But James, I'm afraid. The grandmother will return today. She won't leave without her." James' eyes hardened. "Then she will face me." It wasn't long before the sound of an approaching car rolled across the quiet road. The grandmother stepped out, her posture stiff, her gaze unyielding. In her hands was a folder thick with documents, proof of bloodlines and family ties. But behind her confidence was something else, an echo of pressure, as though someone had guided her every step. "Mr. James," she greeted coldly, as if she already knew who he was. "I am here for my granddaughter." Diep's hand clutched at James' sleeve. He stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "And who told you to come now, after so many months of silence? Who gave you these papers?" Was it my father? The old woman faltered for a second, her lips pressing tightly together. She recovered quickly, replying, "That is none of your concern. The child belongs with her family. Blood does not lie." Blood, James said, his jaw tightening, is not the only bond that matters. Love is stronger than the schemes of men who think they can control everything. His eyes burned with fury, not at the grandmother alone, but at the unseen figure who stood behind her, his father. Tu Diep, caught between them, felt her knees weaken. She had no power against papers and family claims, yet seeing James stand there, his body shielding hers and Nhi's future, gave her the courage to lift her voice. "Madam," she pleaded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I love Nhi. She calls me mother. Can't you see she already has a home here?" The grandmother's gaze softened for the briefest moment, but the folder in her hands seemed to weigh her down, binding her will to someone else's. She turned her face away. "I will not leave without her." Silence fell, thick and suffocating. The morning air was still, waiting for what James would do next, for in that moment, it was no longer just about Nhi, it was about his defiance against his father, his protection of Tu Diep, and the test of love that could break or bind them forever. The story of Nhi and Tu Diep reminds us that love is not defined only by blood, but by the choices we make and the care we give. Tu Diep was not Nhi's biological mother, yet she offered the child something more powerful than mere lineage. She gave her patience, tenderness, and unconditional love. Through sleepless nights, school mornings, and whispered lullabies, she built a bond that no document could measure. When the grandmother appeared, armed with the weight of tradition and the argument of blood ties, Tu Diep was forced to confront one of life's hardest truths. Sometimes love must fight against rules, expectations, and even family. The struggle revealed the depth of her heart. She did not see Nhi as a responsibility she had taken by chance, but as a daughter of her soul. From James, we learn another lesson: true strength lies not in business deals or family influence, but in standing beside those we love when storms rise. He understood that protecting Tu Diep and Nhi meant defying even his own father. Loyalty, in its purest form, is not blind obedience to blood, but courage to do what is right for the people who depend on us. This story teaches us that family is not only the one we are born into. Family is also the one we create with trust, kindness, and sacrifice. It challenges us to ask, is blood stronger than love? Or is love the very essence that gives meaning to blood? In the end, the lesson is simple yet profound. What defines us is not where we come from, but how we choose to love. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is to fight for someone as if they are truly your own. Love, in its purest form, demands sacrifice. Tu Diep's devotion to Nhi shows us that being a parent is not about giving birth, but about giving one's heart every single day. She reminds us that true motherhood is measured not in years or legal documents, but in the small moments of care, holding a child's hand when they are afraid, teaching them kindness, and giving them the courage to dream. The grandmother's insistence on blood ties also gives us a lesson. Tradition and family history can sometimes blind us, making us believe that love can only exist within boundaries set by society. Yet the hesitation in her eyes reveals that even she felt the truth: love cannot be forced, and belonging is not written only in blood, but in the bonds of the soul. James's struggle against his father shows us the cost of integrity. To protect the ones he loved, he had to stand against the very authority that shaped his life. This reminds us that every generation faces a moment when we must decide whether to continue the patterns of the past or to build something new. True courage lies in choosing love and justice, even when it means opposing those closest to us. The story teaches us to value what is invisible to the eye: the bonds of affection, the strength of trust, and the quiet power of sacrifice. It asks us to rethink what family really means. Perhaps family is not just the people who share our blood, but those who share our struggles, who stay when life becomes difficult, and who fight for our happiness even at great personal cost. In the end, the greatest lesson is this: love makes a home, not walls or names. And when we choose to love with all our heart, we create ties stronger than destiny itself.